The advice I would give to somebody coming up behind me about brand building and marketing is that you think your product right now is the most important thing, and it's not. Products come and go, but brands can last literally forever.
From Caribbean Ideas Synapse in Trinidad and Tobago, this is Uptick, a podcast that's part of the Snapshot Podcast Network. Uptick is a show that brings you the stories of the Caribbean entrepreneurs and innovators who are building the next generation of great companies. These are the stories you don't typically hear of how these leaders are working to build brands and businesses that have the potential to not only improve the Caribbean world, but also help the Caribbean world make an impact on the global business stage. Their stories will move you, inspire you, push you to take action, or maybe help spark your next great idea. I'm Chike Farrell, co-founder of Caribbean Ideas, and in today's show, you learn how a fervent belief that Caribbean people can create, market, and distribute luxury products on par with anything in the world fuels Kathryn Nurse of Immortelle Beauty. You learn how she blends her personal brand with content and storytelling to build an ongoing customer relationship, and why she believes that brands must create consistent experiences across all touchpoints. You'll hear how she's adapting to the new challenges thrown up by the coronavirus pandemic, as well as timeless lessons like how she balances all the different roles that come with being an entrepreneur, and how she approaches finding the mental balance necessary to continue pursuing her dreams.
So I have been running Immortelle Beauty for about 9 years now. We launched officially in Trinidad in 2011, and I've been doing some like prep work and stuff for about 1 or 2 years before that. So I would say I've been doing it for 9 or 10 years now. I started it when I was 26. I had been working in the United States in a cosmetic chemistry laboratory. And what our lab would do is that we would do formulations. We would sell formulations to other companies who were interested in working with chemists to launch their own products. But we wouldn't have any part in the marketing or any of the downstream services. We would just sell the formulas themselves, and the company would then take that and then create the brand and the marketing around it. I wanted to be part of the whole process. I didn't like the idea that we just sold a formula and then we never had any more interest in it, even though we kind of came up with it in the lab ourselves. I had been doing that for about 4 years before I decided to come home to Trinidad, and I went straight from university into the formulation lab because I knew exactly that that's what I wanted to do, because I've always really loved fashion and beauty, and I was getting a science degree. I have a biology degree from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. At first I was trying to be a doctor, and I was trying to figure out how I was going to, when I decided I didn't want to do that anymore, I didn't want to not get the science degree. I tried to figure out how I could use this science degree in a way that was more aligned to my interests and my personal passions. And so I was reading about Estee Lauder and how she built her entire empire. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could do that. Right. So I decided I would go straight into the cosmetic lab. And then from the cosmetic lab, I decided I would go straight into my own business when I was pretty young.
Well, that's really cool. Now, what was interesting about that is, sometimes you have folks who, make a complete 180 degree turn to go into their, entrepreneurial career, but you actually sort of started off in the space, even though, as you mentioned, at one point you were going to do medicine, you were going to do some different things. What was it about, kind of touching all the different parts of the process that was intriguing to you? Why was that sort of an appealing thing?
Because, you make this product and you're so connected to it and you love it so much, and you want other people to know that you have made it for them. You want to see other people enjoy it and appreciate it. And you want people to know that you are the person behind that, this experience that you have created for them. So the experience that I had before this, when I was in the lab, I would go into these because we made products from the very low end to the very high end. So it was a huge spectrum. So I got a lot of great experience. And I would go into these very fancy beauty department floors, and I would point at the product, the $515 product I made. And I'd be like, I made that.
Right.
I formulated that product. And my friends would just be like, okay, girl, come on, let's keep walking.
Right.
Like, this is not about you. So no, I just feel like there is, especially now in the beauty industry, there's so much connection between the person who comes up with the ideas and who creates the product and the customer, because of social media, because of the increase in representation in products for all sorts of different skin tones and different ethnicities in the beauty industry. And I just feel like people should know where the products come from, and they should know that people have developed them with them in mind.
So you ended up starting the company after you moved back to Trinidad. So would you say you're focused on Trinidadian market, regional market, international market? Where do you sort of see yourself fitting in?
So right now I'm hopefully focusing on regional, because the thrust of the business has always been like, cosmetics for Caribbean women. So we kind of take into consideration the climate and how people live and the lifestyle here. And so it's really, right now, even though I only really have locations in Trinidad right now, a little bit in Jamaica, regional is really the hope, the goal.
Got you. So what was it that you were seeing that you thought, what, I see an opportunity here. I see like an opening for a different kind of company.
I felt like we didn't have something in the kind of premium space. So when I did get that range of formulation experience, I was always much more interested in the luxury, high-end premium luxury categories, because low-end products were always very simple and straightforward. This was the budget, and this was the materials that went in. But on the higher end range, this was the budget. But then when we saw the price of the product, we realized that there was so much more that went into that product in between the lab formula and getting on the shelf. And that's the area that I got really interested in. And how you build a brand that provides those intangible elements for the customer, as well as the tangible elements that are in the jar or in the bottle. So I felt like we needed something homegrown that was premium, that people could kind of feel the same experiential qualities from.
Right. Well, now, of course, as a co-founder of an advertising agency, you start to talk about branding and positioning, and I start to get excited very, very quickly. So what are some of the things that when you want people to think about, Immortelle Beauty, what are the things that you are always saying, these are the things that I'm trying to land in people's brains about my product and why it's distinctive and why it's more premium?
So I'm very clear on that these days. The tagline for the company is a little local luxury. The idea is that luxury can be affordable and it can be local. When we as customers look at things that are local, we expect them to look a certain way. We expect them to feel a certain way. We expect a certain low level of presentation and a high level of value when it comes to cost. But what I want the customer to start doing is raising their expectations of what they can get from a local product. So we try to make the product as beautiful as we can. We try to make the product as luxurious as we can, while keeping the price relatively affordable. So it's not high end luxury, hundreds of dollars for a lotion, but it is that feeling in an affordable format.
Right. And you mentioned Estee Lauder as one of the brands that you were looking at. When you think about great branding and great marketing, and it doesn't have to be limited just to the cosmetic space, what are the brands that you think do it well that you kind of try to pattern yourself on?
Okay, brands I love is probably an easier question than who do I try to pattern myself on this second. Yeah. But in the beauty space, for sure, Fenty Beauty, Rihanna's Fenty Beauty is like the benchmark right now for everyone.
Right.
In terms of product and in terms of, but it's kind of hard to compare yourself to a brand like that, because they had a captive market, obviously, in Rihanna's followers and in Rihanna's fans, on top of also creating great products. So that's one of my favorites. But I am that person who does look to people who have way more resources than me and see how they're doing things and try to figure out some patterns from them.
I think that brand that you're talking about is really intriguing because what Fenty's been able to do in terms of how it's upended Victoria's Secret and sort of changed the way that people perceive beauty, and it's not just cookie cutter and everybody doesn't have to look this way, is really powerful. Is that what appeals to you about what they've done, or are there other things that
basically Rihanna's come into a couple of different industries now. So it's, as you said, yes, it's the lingerie space, but it's also the beauty space. And all the time, it's kind of like what's going on now. All the time, everybody said, no, we couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. We couldn't do it. And then something comes in to like disrupt, and everybody's like, oh yeah, this is easy. So what Rihanna did was, the first thing she did was create this foundation line that had 40 shades of foundation in it, which they always said was impossible. Right? And then she did it, and then all of a sudden people are coming out with 50 shades and 100 shades, and all of the multicultural people who were buying products, who buy products more often and more expensively than let's say just white people, for want of a better, are like, but I thought we couldn't do this. I thought we couldn't do this. And then all of a sudden everybody is doing it. So it's that inclusion, but also the products are really fun. And Rihanna is so closely tied to the branding. It isn't this like pet project where other people are like, she is the face. And so if you're a Rihanna lover, as I have been for my entire life, you feel like closer to her as well, because she, completely embodies the brand. So there's a bunch of reasons. It's a great brand. She is a great.
I love that. And yeah, I am right there with you as a Rihanna lover. So yeah, say no more. But speaking of people who are, 100% intertwined with their brand, I mean, you're not too far away from that yourself, because,
right.
I know that you ended up, sort of saying, I'm going to be that front person and
right.
Step out there in front of the camera. So what was that transition like for you?
So I didn't do it at first. At first, I wanted the brand to stand on its own. I didn't want it to be like, because of course, when you just start in a small country, it's things like, your dad is out there like, try my daughter's lotion, it's the bomb. And like, I'm like, oh gosh, daddy, I really just want people to not feel like pressured. I want people to discover the product on their own and like it on their own. I wanted the product to stand on its own without me having to stand up behind it and be like, oh, this is Kathryn Nurse lotion, right? And then we started the social media. So I did a lot of product shots that were like without me in them. And then we noticed, obviously, from the analytics that every time I was in the pictures, the responses, the engagement, the views, everything would just like be exponentially better.
Right.
And so I was kind of forced to even now it's still difficult for me, but I was kind of forced to kind of come out and be the spokesperson behind it, and realize that one of the main USPs of the brand, one of the main selling propositions really is me, and the fact that I have done it and I have created these things, and that people look to me as an expert in this area, and I need to capitalize on that. It's still a little uncomfortable, but I try.
Yeah. It's funny because, I'm always in two minds about this, right? There's one part of me that believes that, and I can kind of hear it in what you're saying, that I think you maybe almost believe it too, that on the one hand, the true mark of, building a great business is that it can exist without you. But then on the other hand, right, in certain sorts of businesses, it makes 100% sense for you to be sort of indelibly woven with the brand. So if you were to think about, how you scale that, and I think in the beauty space, as you mentioned, a lot of brands tend to be woven in with somebody. So how do you hope to scale, if you will, so that you could still be that front person, but also be in a position to expand and scale more broadly?
Well, in the short to medium term, it would be to focus on those things. So as I got support staff or whatever to handle certain tasks, to keep owning the spokesperson, the face tasks, while the business grew. So right now, of course, I'm cheap cook and bottle washer. So I'm in the factory, like supervising the production process. I'm in the lab creating the products. I'm also doing the fulfillment. I'm writing up the DHL slips, dropping it to DHL. At DHL, they call me boss lady. Like, hey, boss lady. But obviously, I would minimize those things that could be delegated, and I would focus more and deepen the personal branding elements, tying that into the brand in the short to medium term. Long term, however, I don't know.
Yes.
I haven't figured that one out.
Any number could play. Well, we're going to come back to some long term because, we're recording this right in the middle of, quite the situation with coronavirus and COVID-19, which makes long range planning difficult to say the least. But before we go forward, I want to go back. Tell me a little bit about, where you grew up in Trinidad and were there influences that you could look back on and say, that played a role in me, jumping out into the entrepreneurial space. Tell me a little bit about that.
So I grew up in West Trinidad in Diego Martin and St. James. I went to Bishop Anstey High School, and everybody who goes to who lives in Trinidad know that many of our schools have a very indelible mark on who and kind of our values and how we are socialized. So, and my mother went to Bishop's already. So So I grew up with a very strong, independent mother and a father who was an entrepreneur at times himself. And they were probably my biggest influences. My mother loved nice things, loved nice experiences. And that is one of the most formative experiences of my life, because I am always just like, how do we make this more indulgent? How do we make this nicer? How do we make people feel emotions from this? And I think that was hugely influenced by my mother, particularly in the area of beauty. She would travel, she would go to England and she would go to the US, and she would come back with her stocks of beauty products, obviously, because we didn't have like Sephora's back in those days, and we didn't have skyboxes. So she would have to bring back her stocks of her fashion fair makeup or her prescriptive fragrances. And she always had this stuff in this box. And that when anything would finish, she would go straight into the box to just pull out her next one that she had lined up ready to go. My mom passed away when I was 14, but she was still like a really huge influence on me up until then and then beyond as well. And then my father has always just been like, listen, if you work for yourself, you never have to answer to anybody. You never have to. He's tried to instill a serious sense of independence in me. And somehow I developed some characteristics that don't make me the best employee. Because, which are obviously these things that they say are great for being entrepreneurs, but don't make you just the best employee. I'm just like, why do I have to listen to so these rules that you've set, like, why? Like, they don't seem to make much sense to me. I have to get up every day at what time? Like, I have to wear a uniform. Like, those things, I don't understand how those things contribute. And why can't I just do it my way? Why can't I just figure out a better way to do things? That's why I think I kind of struck out on my own so young.
Yeah.
Like literally after my first real life job, I was just like, yeah, I think I'm going to do my own thing.
Right.
Have been doing that since then. So definitely my two parents, my biggest influences for sure.
Yeah, well, that's great. And you knew I was going to come and ask about the question of not being very easily employable when you moved back to Trinidad. So I'm glad you said that, because I think one of the things that I always like to raise here, I mean, even for myself, before starting Caribbean Ideas, I was working at Microsoft, and literally 2 years in, I was on the horn with my buddy and eventual co-founder Brevard, throwing ideas back and forth. And so I think a lot of people, either they're itching to get into something entrepreneurial, or they have a side hustle or what have you. So as you were kind of going through this journey, you're like, I don't think I could, just go do a normal job. Did you do a whole bunch of planning? And sort of like thinking about it, this is what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it? Or did you kind of fall into it more? Where were you along that spectrum?
My father made sure that I planned. So one of the main reasons that I came back home, yes, to study, and actually, no, how it happened was I really wanted to come back home. I was just like, I was very lonely in the States. It's so funny because all my friends who lived in New York at the time now have moved to New Jersey, but I was the only one in New Jersey at that time.
Right.
And nobody came to Jersey ever. So if I ever wanted to see anybody, I had to go to them. And it was a lonely time for me. And so I was like, I just really want to come home. And he was like, well, if you're coming home here, you got to figure out what you're going to do. And I remember my timeline was 17 months.
So what were some of the things that were in that business plan? I think a lot of people...
dreams.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay, good. Yeah. So tell me about the dreams. And I'm very curious then, relative to what you hoped might happen. What happened, kind of how you planned it, and then what was completely different than what you had planned.
Oh, that young girl had no idea how long things took to happen and how much things cost. Like, just no clue. So I think by like year 3, I had 3 different lines of different types of products for different categories of women, and like I was selling in multiple different locations and up the islands, and it was probably just, I should go back and look at it. It was probably just completely like unrealistic, right. Considering everything that has happened since then. I remember, however, when it comes to like the financial part, I remember starting out with a loan. So it was probably actually a little bit more flexible than I am now, where we don't really have any loan or lending that we have, not that we have access to, but that we are using right now.
Right.
So with that money, I made the very important step to go to a branding company. So I went to Above Group, and we developed the brand, Immortelle, the logo, the package, fonts, things that I had never thought of, fonts, colors, that I now realize are so important. And that was probably the thing in that first business plan that was the smartest thing that we did, and the foundation of what we have now. Because we started out with a clear idea of, this is how this brand is going to look, this is how this brand is going to feel, and this is how this brand is going to communicate to people.
So I want to go back, Kathryn, to what you said about the focus on your brand and positioning and fonts and logos. And you said something interesting. You said that people really pay attention to that. How have you figured out that people really pay attention to those things, so that it makes a meaningful difference?
Well, first of all, because I pay attention to those things. Particularly in the beauty space, I don't have a lot of problems that I have to address. So I gravitate towards products for other reasons. I gravitate towards products because of their texture and what the formula is like, and something seems unique and new and different. But I also gravitate towards products because of how they look and how exciting they feel. And I feel like, particularly when I started, there were not a lot of people in the beauty space locally, regionally, looking to imbue their products with that kind of excitement and energy.
Right.
And I wanted to make my products feel how I feel about international products.
Mm-hmm.
Like pretty much, like I was just like, these products are so exciting. They like make me so happy. I want to try and figure out how I can do that for other people as well.
Gotcha. So tell me a little bit more about the business. So tell me about the different lines you have and the different products. Let me understand the full range.
So right now we have our major product line. It's called the Essentials. It's a bath and body product line. We have 5 different types of product, ranging from like shower gel to different types of lotions, oil. And we have that in 8 different fragrances, multiple different sizes. And then we also have our home fragrance line, which is like a very like premium looking candle and home read diffuser line right now. So we have 3 fragrances in that line, and they have like really rich metallic packaging. It's really very pretty. And then the original line, which is our first line that we launched with, is actually a foot rehab line. It's called foot rehab. It's a at-home pedicure line made up of 3 products for you to like do your pedicure at.
As you've extended from, where you started to a different thing, what drove each extension? Was it sort of customer demand and customer feedback, or was it sort of seeing a new opportunity, or was it sort of, hey, this is the progression that I'm trying to go on?
So novelty drives the innovation and the differentiation for the beauty industry. So you always have to be producing new products in order to continue building your demand. You can't really sit with a line of 12 products for 12 years in a beauty company. Having new things and always having something that people want to check out and want to try is really what brings people coming back to you. So when I started, the goal is always to look to expansion. Like, what else can I add? What else can I add? What else can I add? To make sure that everybody's satisfied.
Yeah, that makes sense. I always like to spend some time on, learnings and things that people have had as they've gone through their experience. But, entrepreneurship is full of ups and it's full of downs. But I'm going to switch it up a little bit this time, and I want to talk about, some of the good things that have happened, right? So let's talk a little bit about, something that's gone really, really well on this journey for you. What's an achievement that you're really proud of?
Probably my biggest achievement so far is opening my store. Probably on that first business plan, I thought opening a store, a physical location, was going to be something very easy that was going to happen within a couple of years. But it took me 9 years to open my first store, which is now at the Normandy Hotel in St. Anne's. And I'm really, really proud of it.
Got you. So it was kind of like, so you're kind of going for something like what Apple was going for, where you had your products and you wanted to match product experience.
Similar thinking, different execution.
Yeah, right. Awesome. Yeah. And why was that important to you to bring that to life in that way?
So somewhere along the middle of my journey there, around 2012, I actually went back to school to get a master's and MBA in luxury brand management. And I really learned how just basically the most premium high-end brands figure out how to communicate at all sorts of different touch points. Basically every single place that the consumer meets them, they figure out how to let the consumer touch the brand. And so I'm very focused in every interaction people have with us to be trying to communicate the same thing over and over again. So it can't be that you come into our pop-up shop and you feel like not into our pop-up shop. You can't come and see us at like a market, because here we have our local product vendor markets, and you feel that I've put less effort into it than if you came to my Instagram page. You can't go to the Instagram page and feel like there's less work been done here than at the store. And you can't go to the store and feel like this is not what the website looks like. You know what I mean? Everything needs to be cohesive, and every time you need to feel the same feeling. And so that's how I go about things.
So I'm curious about your customers. How far afield in the world, have you gotten customers to purchase your products?
So through the website, we have full e-commerce functionality on our website. So through the website, I think it's the furthest has really been just like different cities in Europe at this point in time, all throughout the region, all throughout the US and Canada, but nowhere very far afield. Nowhere that I haven't been myself yet.
Got you. So you're covering, your own retail store. You have e-commerce. Are you also, working the trade and you've driven distribution through other retailers in the market?
So we have some small, like local small businesses as well. But then we have like Starlight Pharmacy here, which is like a very established pharmacy with 3 locations also carrying the products. So that helps, like at a time like now where everything non-essential is closed, having a pharmacy open with the product, that means there's still somewhere that people can go and get it because that's an essential business and it stays open.
Gotcha. And so as you were going through the, the journey of pitching people on the trade, because I think one of the things that people always want to hear is, how do I, pitch other businesses? How do I sell my product? So have you had any learning that you want to pass on to people about, what worked really well as what might not work to kind of pitch your product to get other businesses to take it on and back you?
So many of the times that I've gotten one of these breakthroughs, they have already seen the product somewhere. A couple of times they've called me in before. And so they believe in the product already because it's a small market. So they might have experienced it or interacted with it before. When I'm pitching kind of blind, when I have tried to make the approach, sometimes I get a little disappointed. I can't lie. I get a little disenchanted because I still think retail hair locally is still very focused on the bottom line and not focused on experience. And when I go in to pitch, I go in pitching on experience and excitement and vibe and emotion and energy and they're just like, where's your price list?
Right. Right. Let me do that. Let me do some math. Let me figure out some margin, and maybe kind of go from there. But does that then sort of lead you to some insight into what kind of customer your brand is for versus what you're not? Because that's always something that our agency recently went through a transformation. We went sort of the less well-trodden path because we were a digital agency for years. And then we sort of said, well, you know what, we're going to go towards the full service agencies. We're going to offer everything. But kind of going through that exercise and some of the same things that you mentioned in terms of brand and so on, we had to really think about, who are you for and who are you not for, right? If a brand is going to be good, it's going to tell you just as much who you're not for as who you're for. So what has that led you to do if you're making a sales pitch effectively? What are some of the things that you look out for to sort of say, yep, you know what, this tells me that I'm on the right path with this customer or prospect versus, oh, nope, these are the things to back away?
When it comes to wholesale, the first thing I look at always is the physical space. First of all, the physical space tells me everything I need to know about how these people feel about their products and how they feel about their customers and how they feel about the experience. And I can tell if we are aligned. So I'll give Starlight Pharmacy as a really good example. It's a beautiful store. Like, people go in there, they expect to get a prescription. They come out afterwards, they spend $650 in things that just like excited them that day. And then they're just like, I'm never going back to Starlight ever again, because there's just so many little discoveries and things to find and things just to make your experience nicer in the pharmacy. So that is a place that has always worked really, really well. And when it comes to where they position me, where they place me, how they arrange the products, I generally don't have a lot of issues with them. So the attention that a retailer places on those experiential things themselves tells me a lot. It tells me that that's what I'm looking for, because my customer appreciates that. Yeah. My customer is not looking for a big red sticker with, 30% off. I'm like, oh yeah, sure, fine. I mean, that would be lovely, but that's not their primary thing. So when it comes to dealing with customers directly, I can tell by the things that they pay attention to, by the things that they comment on. And then there's a great selection in Trinidad of people who really want to support local products. When you can tell that when they found mine, that's something that they can support and that they really do love, they have really kind of like hit like the mother load for them, and they will always come back. So basically, those are the kind of customers I'm looking for, the ones that appreciate the touches.
Right. Now, you said earlier on that, you're like, hey, I want to touch all the different parts of running a business like this, and you founded a company, and now you do. what part has been the most challenging for you to, if not master, build your capability in as a CEO?
I like to create an environment and make you want to buy into it, as opposed to come and sell you or pitch you on what the product attributes are. And sometimes that's not the best approach. So I'm not a great salesperson at all. Selling is an issue. It's
Yeah.
terrible because of tangible product.
So I'm curious then, that's probably a good place to then segue, because one of the things about, leading companies is building a team, right? Tell me a little bit about how you have, uh, even while being chief cook and bottle washer, tell me about how you've gone about adding talent around you that, either complements you, complements your skills, or adds in areas that you might already be strong. What are the things that you've learned about that? Because that's kind of the foundation of building any team and any business ultimately.
Right. So one of the places that I invest most when it comes to team members is digital, because I cannot afford traditional marketing and advertising means. So I have a lot of people that I work with on a freelance basis to help build out the digital and social media presences for the business. So we have a content creation team. I have a social media manager. I have a content manager, and we all work together to try and create as much content as we can. Then I have my intern squad, who unfortunately right now nobody's doing much of anything, because one of them sits in the store basically interacting with customers every few days. Not that I have had to send home in that official sense, but we haven't been working.
Right.
And then I have an admin intern who I've also asked, just in terms of social distance, and everybody's at home working from home. So that's basically the extent of my team. On top of that, my dad has, banking and finance background, so he helps me with the money management part of it. But
Right.
yeah, otherwise it's still very, very small. And in terms of permanent employees, it's just the one.
Yeah. So you mentioned, bringing these different folks together to create content, and content and storytelling is a really powerful way to build brand affinity and loyalty and so on. What are some of the types of content that you create, and how has that helped you grow your customer base?
So one of my favorite types of content are the kind of the story type content where things expire. So you kind of have to keep checking in to see what this brand is presenting to you. And I like talking to people directly on stories, and like doing tutorial type work, trying to tell them how to use the products, but also marrying that with my own personal social media platform and talking to people about not just my own products, but products I like. So my goal is really to try and establish myself as an expert in the beauty space, period. So that if people come to me through my personal platform, they'll be like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about, and they have their own line. Let me check it out. Mm-hmm. Or if people come through the Immortelle platform, it could be like, oh, I really love these products. This is really interesting. Oh, and then there's this person who seems to know a lot about beauty behind it too. So let me follow her. So I try to create two different types of content, personal and brand content, that kind of feed off of each other. And I'm supposed to be doing more blogging, and I'm supposed to be getting into YouTube videos. And that's really what I'm supposed to be doing in this downtime. But I haven't gotten into that yet, but that's my next step.
So did you just sort of happen upon that angle of, hey, I'm going to create helpful content? And that's what, because I mean, what you just described, ironically, is like some of the basic principles of inbound marketing. Like, instead of trying to sell somebody, just try to help them first. So was it that you sort of studied that and went there, or did you just sort of happen upon that almost instinctively?
I think it's more instinctive because it's what I gravitate towards the most. obviously the beauty industry is one of the areas that influencer marketing has been most successful. Particularly in like 2017 and 2018, people were just spending billions of dollars because, beauty YouTubers and beauty Instagrammers just told them to.
So, one of the interviews that we did was with a woman named Sophia Stone, who's actually, been doing quite well with exporting her brand of Caribbean teas. And so, as you mentioned, wanting to expand regionally, what have been some of the things that you've been doing to kind of penetrate the regional markets more?
So that was actually one of the goals that we had for 2020 that have been waylaid a little bit. I really wanted, because as I said, how places look and the feel of physical locations are really important to me. My market research really needs to include travel and going into spaces to see if they are a good fit. So we had hoped to start doing some of that travel this year. And unfortunately, COVID-19 had other plans for us.
Right.
So that was going to be my initial thing, to kind of create a list of people that I wanted to pitch based on basically what we were talking about earlier, them having aligned types of customers as I do. In the meantime, it's really just really website. And again, through social media, connecting people to that website.
So as we talk a little bit about COVID-19, I think if there's one thing that, if there's one word, I guess, that, kind of comes along with that for businesses is adaptation, right? And that's something that every business has to do generally, but in a lot of ways, it's been forced upon us all. And in some industries, it's much harder than it is in others. Can you give me some examples of things that you've, had to do differently, or you're starting to think about doing differently from your normal way of operating to try to adapt to this environment and still kind of keep connected with your customers and keep your business going?
So honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out because everything changes so quickly. Last week you could run your store, this week you can't, So I'm still really in the process of trying to work out how I'm going to adapt, because then also the difficulty is you're trying to forecast how the landscape is going to look when this is all over. A, you don't know when this is all going to be over. And B, you have no idea how many changes are going to be permanent and how many changes that we can't even foresee yet will have taken place. Mm-hmm. So it's very difficult. And so I'm just really taking it day by day. Like today I was like, thought I had figured it out. I was like, I can still do I can get, instead of dropping my packages to DHL, I can get DHL to do pickups at my location and then ship that out. So all I need to do is drop off my TT Post packages to the post office and get my DHL pickups. Then to find out that TT Post, the post office is not open for the next 2 weeks.
Right.
So I have to figure out if how I can get packages to their courier, even though the post office is not open. So, even like a plan that you had at the beginning of the day, by the end of the day, it's a different plan.
Absolutely.
Adaptation is happening in real time. Every single day, how do I maneuver around this new thing that has come up?
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned earlier on kind of thinking about more time in terms of, content or other parts of the business that you might have been focused on. So is that a place where you think, okay, I'm going to try to double down in some of those areas, even while I work through operations?
Yes. So definitely. But I'm also trying to take the approach that, in my list of personal priorities, my mental health is utmost priority to me. And I tend to be very anxious. My friends call me Nervous Nancy. I tend to be very anxious. So I am being very careful not to overextend myself and not to stress myself out trying to get to like some ridiculous level of productivity right now.
Yeah.
So I am taking my time so that I don't kill myself out.
Which is true, because I think if there's one thing, I mean, it's not like, leading a business is not stressful, even in the best of times. So, far less now. How do you find the time to, and this is not a COVID-19 question only, but how do you find time to, try to take the occasional breath, and keep that mental space optimized?
Oh, I make the time because I have seen too many times how easily I get overwhelmed and how I can stress myself out. And so it's just always at the forefront of my mind that I need to take a break, that I need to relax. And most of the time when I try to stress myself out to figure out a problem, most of the time if I go and take a nap or if I go to sleep and wake up the next day, it is much easier to work through. And then mostly to give myself compassion for not necessarily getting everything on the to-do list done every single day, or that everything needs to be figured out all at one time, that it's okay to not, especially during this time.
Absolutely. Now, as we start to kind of wrap here a little bit, I want to kind of come back to one of the things we discussed before, because, there's real-time adaptation. There were, goals for this year. Same thing for, our business goals for this year. Okay, you got to go back to the drawing board and, sharpen the pencil and change it up. But with that said, I still want to have you kind of go into the imagination box for a second, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you set out on this business, as you said, there are things you might have thought, oh, this was going to take a short time. I have a bunch of those. I can't tell you how many things I thought were going to be done in 3 years, and well, here we are, 12 years later, and we're still working through them. But talk a little bit about your dreams, right? For a brand and a business like yours, what do you think is possible? Like that's probably maybe a better tone to take, right? It's not this is going to happen, but what do you think is possible as a Caribbean entrepreneur trying to build the luxury brand space? Where do you think that you can take a business like this, or someone can take a business like this?
I want to have a space that is not necessarily sales focused, but is experience focused. So some sort of branded spa where people could come spend like a day and have an Immortelle experience through products used during spa treatments, that type of thing. But really just take it. Like I want it to be a place that you never really want to leave, that you kind of have to be forced to leave. And particularly in Trinidad, we don't have spa spaces like that. We have, the day spas, but we don't have those retreats that you find in other different islands where tourism is more of a focus. And that was really one of my dreams, to have people experience the products in a different way. Everything else, I would say, is super influx. Because, for example, e-commerce has always been really big to me. I have always been a great online shopper. I'm very good at it. But I realized that in the local market, it really hasn't been that big a thing for a bunch of different reasons, credit card penetration being one of the main ones. And I'm really excited. So whereas the website, I have wanted to use social media to drive people to the website. So the kind of goal had been kind of indirect, try and build up your following on social media to try and increase your website following. Now that this is all happening, I'm really excited to see that people might be just circumventing the social media aspects altogether, and e-commerce is becoming like a necessity. And I'm kind of excited to see how I can capitalize on that, which is probably not one of my goals at the beginning of the year, but now definitely is. So I would say those two are the kind of short-term and long-term, but long-term and short-term respectively.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because, there are new things happening with, as you said, not just e-commerce, but in payments.
Yes. All of a sudden, all of these new innovations are happening that,
exactly.
It's like what I said before, but I thought we couldn't do this last year. I thought we weren't ready for this. I thought the customer base wasn't ready for all these things. And now it's just like, oh, they're just all here.
Yep, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say, and that has certainly never been truer than right now. Right, when you have to figure it out, people find a way to figure it out. So for all those people who are wanting to build a brand, market something, create something, I want to get a little bit of a closing thought from you, right? And let's build it on your experience. If you could kind of go back again to the start, and talk to yourself as you were starting out, what have you learned about brand building and marketing that you wish you knew then that you would tell to somebody else who's coming behind you?
The advice I would give to somebody coming up behind me about brand building and marketing is that you think your product right now is the most important thing, and it's not. Products come and go, but brands can last literally forever if you know how to tweak things, if you are flexible, and if you are able to remain consistent while adapting. The biggest value in your business is not the money, it's not the product, it's the brand. And if you develop it and you make it strong and you make it consistent, then you have a foundation upon which all of these earthquakes and hurricanes and pandemics can happen, and you still have a fighting chance of survival.
That was Kathryn Nurse, founder of Immortelle Beauty in Trinidad and Tobago, a company that's creating a new line of luxury cosmetic products built by Caribbean people, for Caribbean people, and the world beyond. If you'd like to be the first to know when the next episode drops, please subscribe to this podcast via your preferred platform. And don't forget, share Uptick with a friend. On behalf of Caribbean Ideas and the Snapshot Network, this is Chike Farrell signing off. And remember, keep on ticking up.